I am a candidate for the 10th Congressional District to get back to Congress. I had the great honor of serving in 2013 to 2015 representing this district. In 2014, National Republicans spent more money attacking me than any other congressional district in the country. Why was that? Perhaps it was because, if you look at their commercials, of my vigilant advocacy and support and defense of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Maybe they attacked me because of my record on women's issues, my 100% support of a woman's right to make her own choice about her own body, my 100% record with both Planned Parenthood and NARAL. Or perhaps it was my work on the environment. I was a champion for the Great Lakes, advocated and worked to make sure that we provide the next generation, your generation, the chance for a sustainable environment, healthy and clean. That's why I got an A from the Sierra Club. If not the A from the Sierra Club, maybe they attacked me because of the F I got from the NRA. My first speech as a member of Congress on the floor of the House of Representatives was about reducing gun violence, where I called for a universal background check law and a ban on assault weapons. But at the core, I think the reasons the Republicans spent more money attacking me is because they knew and felt that I was bringing the fight to them. And it's that fight that I believe is going to help me win in November to beat Bob Dole as I did in 2012 and continue the work we started in 2012. And that's why I'm back in this race. But before I get to the next issues of what we're fighting for, let me tell those of you who don't know me a little bit about my background. I want you to remember three words: family, community, career. Because those are the aspects of me that I create my identity. It starts with family. Many of you know I grew up in Denver. I grew up in an incredibly close-knit family. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was the matriarch. She came from the pre-Soviet Union, from Russia, fleeing in 1912, the pogroms around Kiev. She came with her parents and her 6 siblings. Her brother Sam, who I'm named after, my Hebrew name is Shmuel, was murdered in 1942 when an assailant walked into his office and shot him 4 times. That's why I care so passionately all my life about gun violence. My mom is one of 6 children. She's the youngest of 5 girls, and my Uncle Stephen was born 5 years later. Can you imagine having 5 older sisters raised in a family like that? But it was a family that was incredibly close. I'm one of 3 kids. My grandmother, Molly B., had 18 grandchildren. And it is in that environment that I came to know the understanding of working with others, helping others, and leaning on each other. I came to Chicago in 1979 to go to college. In 1988, in graduate school, I met my wife, Julie, who's here. Julie also comes from a very close family. She grew up in Glencoe. It is those values that drive us. In 1989, we got married. In 1990, we moved to Glenview. And in 1991, we moved to Deerfield. It's in Deerfield where we created our home. We've each built our own careers. But the most important thing that we've done is we've raised 2 incredible boys. Adam's almost 23. He graduated college, and next month he starts as a Navy officer at Newport, Rhode Island. And Daniel left today to continue his sophomore year in college in Pennsylvania. We're very proud of our kids. And more than anything else, it's about our kids that move us forward to do what I do to run for Congress. So that's family. The next aspect of me is community. I was raised with the Jewish tradition of Hillel. If I'm not for myself, who will be? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? So we're involved in the community. That takes place at a local level. My work in coaching softball or baseball and soccer. It's my work at Jewish federations, volunteering at schools, involved in the synagogue. It's being on the board of business and professional people for the public interest, or the Council of Global Affairs. And the third is career. I'm an industrial engineer. I had a long career in consulting, but in 2010 I decided to try something else and go into public service. And that's what I did, and with your help I was elected. So let me now talk about where we're going with the election and what matters. 3 more words: economy, opportunity, and progress. We need an economy that works together, that works for everybody, not just the most fortunate few. I believe that if we have a growing middle class, we can tackle our problems. But for the last 30 years, we've seen a declining middle class. We've seen a shrinking of the median income. We need opportunity where every kid, we were talking earlier about education, where every kid, regardless of where they live, has an opportunity to get a good education. We need an opportunity where everyone has the access to affordable health care, be able to put a roof over their head, get a secure retirement. That's why I defend and protect Medicare and Social Security. I'm wrapping up, I promise. Right? These are the things we need to do, but progress is the most important piece. For the last 8 years, we've seen President Obama try to move us forward, Congress try to move us forward, but we've seen a Republican Congress try to move us backwards. If we're going to continue to support the progress we've seen over the last 100 years, whether it's the right for women, the right for voting rights, the opportunity for young people, or protection of our seniors, all the things we've done over the last 100 years, if we're going to continue that, we need to make sure that we take back the Senate and we take back the House. And taking back the House starts in the 10th District. I know how to win in this district. I've done it with your help, and I know I can win again in November of this year, and I ask for your support. Thank you very much. I joke, I think Bob Dole wakes up every morning and asks himself, what would Brad do today? And he is taking actions to try to protect himself. But the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which spent $1 million against me in the last election, the election before that, announced earlier this summer that they were going to go after me in the primary to weaken me against Bob Dole. That's how concerned they are about my candidacy against him. The Republicans, Paul Ryan, the new Speaker of the House, has always been a friend of Bob Dole's. He has given Bob Dole money and put him on the top of his list. This seat is probably, once again, the #1 target of the Republicans. And they worry because they know, like I said, I took the fight to them when I was in Congress. I'm taking the fight to them now. And they're worried that I'm going to beat Bob Dole in November, because I am.
Were you on the Foreign Affairs Committee when you were freshman congressman?
I was on the Small Business Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. I expect that I will be. One of the best calls I got when they were recruiting me to run for Congress back in the winter was from Vice President Joe Biden, saying, Brad, I hope you run. We need you. And what he said is, we need you because of the leadership I've shown on foreign affairs. My voice on foreign affairs from the day I got there was a voice that came with credibility. I worked hard. I understood the issues. One of the jokes about me going into committee hearings, they said, we always know Brad read every briefing book. He read every testimony before he got there. And I think that was reflected in the questions I asked, whether it had to do with issues around the globe of terrorism. I was on the Middle East North Africa Committee and the Terrorism, Nonproliferation, and Trade subcommittees. Whatever the issues were, whatever the topic was, I always made sure I went in prepared. And I think that gave me a credibility, and I think that's why my colleagues, I've got the support of all the leadership of the Democratic Party, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and over 60 of my colleagues have come out and come to my support here because they look to me for leadership, and in particular leadership on foreign affairs.
Last night I saw the movie The Big Short about securitized mortgages. Would you vote or support legislation to break up banks that are too big to fail?
Well, I think that legislation already exists, and that's the Dodd-Frank bill. And I think Dodd-Frank was a great step forward. We need to make sure that we have an economy that's working for everyone, that the system isn't rigged. I think a lot of the message that Bernie Sanders is resonating on is that people feel that they don't have a chance. Right? I saw a study in the spring that estimated that in 30 years there'll be 5 billion, with a B, middle-class people living in the world. That's the rise of a global economy. In Asia, they estimated an 86% growth in middle-class income families. In Africa, it's going to grow 40%, 6% from a smaller number. Latin America was in the teens. Europe was 2%. In North America, Canada, United States, and Mexico, they're projecting a 5% shrinkage in middle-class families. We can't lead the world. We can't live up to our progressive democratic values if we don't have a growing middle class. And we can't have a growing middle class when the system's rigged to support those who have the most. We can't have a system of have-lots and have-nots. We need a system of a growing middle class where everyone feels there are pathways and ladders to success and to opportunity, education, career, and that's what I'm focused on. Great question. So the question was, Republicans targeted me in particular because of my support and defense of Obamacare. The question was, how do I feel about Bernie Sanders' call for a single-payer system? I think the Affordable Care Act was a great step forward. Healthcare is going to constantly be changing. We're seeing it now. Because of Affordable Care Act, we have over 90% of Americans with health insurance. People don't lose their insurance when they get sick. People with pre-existing conditions can get insurance. Children can stay on their parents' plans until age 26. All incredibly important things. Perhaps most important, we're seeing the rate of increase in healthcare costs fall below the rate of inflation for the first time in any of our lives. We need to keep moving that forward. We've got a system we need to work with. One of my concerns about Bernie Sanders' plan is the idea of Medicare for all. Medicare is run, Medicaid both are run as state programs. The last thing I want to see is Bruce Rauner controlling or deciding who gets insurance or what procedures are covered. So I think the Affordable Care Act is the path we should be following. I'm going to fight to protect that, and I'm going to work to make sure that we continue to move that forward.
What has your role been, and do you have any current connection to the leadership in Congress for foreign affairs?
Thanks for a question. The question was, what was my background? Why did I establish the leadership on Foreign Affairs Committee? And the fact of the matter is, in foreign affairs, it's always been an interest of mine. In particular, a strong U.S.-Israel relationship has been a passion of mine. This is something that I have worked on, advocated on, going back to when I was in high school. Beginning in the 1990s, I started going to Washington to lobby for a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, as well as other issues in my business, but in particular on this issue. So it's something that I think I have a credibility. Julie and I went to Israel in 2013 with 34 other members of Congress under the leadership of Steny Hoyer, who is the Democratic whip. I'll tell you just a quick side story. We knew a lot of them wouldn't know the tradition. We had, when my son had his bar mitzvah, I may have bought 3 times as many yarmulkes as we needed for the bar mitzvah, so we had some extras. And they're white yarmulkes. I brought enough for everybody. When we went to the wall, first time I handed out yarmulkes to all the men who were going to the wall. So imagine there are probably 50 men, 50 women, this sea of white yarmulkes walking. And I'm walking with Steny Hoyer. And I said, Steny, this is all my plot of converting members of Congress. The yarmulkes was the easy part. The circumcision is going to be a little bit more difficult. But on that trip, I think what people saw was I knew the issues. I wasn't new to the issues. First time I went to Israel was 1983 when I lived there. I've been there more than 15 times. Our kids have been there at least 10 times each. It's something I know and I understand. So on that trip, as we went around and talked about issues, and we met with the Prime Minister and President Perez, and went into the West Bank and met with leaderships of the Palestinian Authority, the credibility I had and established relationships I had with many of these people helped give me some credibility. Steny Hoyer, who is one of the leading advocates for a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, had a working group. There were 4 people in that working group. Henry Waxman, who'd been in Congress for 40 years. Elliot Engel, who is the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Ted Deutsch, who is the ranking member of the Middle East North Africa Committee. And me as a freshman. It wasn't that I was the only freshman in that group, but I was only one of 4 members of the Democratic